It's my pleasure to welcome you all on the first session of the Prerna Series. And today's session is on peer review, documentation part most importantly. So before moving further, I request everyone to please place your hand on your heart for the ICI motto.
येष सुप्तेषु जागृति येष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you. So friends, from today we are starting our new project Prerna, which is the brainchild of our dynamic chairman, CA Arpit Kabra. And what is this project Prerna is like, through this series, we are trying to strengthen our small medium practitioners chartered accountant and who can become a Prerna. So it's just a thought that women chartered accountant can become a Prerna or they can help to small medium practitioners. I recognize the presence of our chairman, CA Arpit Kabra, treasurer, CA Ketan Sayya, and speaker for today's session, CA Abhijit Sanzgiri, sir. So thank you so much for accepting the last minute request. So to know more about our project, definitely our chairman will be there with us shortly because he has to attend some urgent meeting. So till that time, I request to our treasurer, Ketan Sayya sir, to please talk more on this project Prerna and address to the participants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm also in travel. We are just commuting. I'll just put off my video for a better connectivity.
No problem.
So, the learned speaker and dear friend Abhijit, the immediate past secretary and current regional council member Shweta Jain, chairman of the regional council Arpit ji, and dear participants. It's a pleasure to talk to all of you in this first series of Prerna. The Prerna, as Shweta told, is, sort of a initiative where we want to see the win-win for SMPs as well as for women chartered accountant. So when initially, beginning of the year, when we were talking to so many chartered accountants, we find that the small and medium-sized practitioners do not have knowledge partner, wisdom partner. They are lacking in growth strategies. They are also not aware about the IT developments which are happening in the CA firms. Another side, we have so many female chartered accountants who have taken break in their active life because of some or other priorities of their life, and they want to come back to the profession, but not doing the compliance work. When we were talking to them, we were seeing the difficulties that there is a gap of 2 year, 5 year, and now they are finding it difficult to upgrade themselves and cope up with the changes which have happened, and they are not ready to take up those responsibilities which have come in the recent time in attestation. So we thought that these can be practice management catalysts. We will train them through some such program which we are right now having. We also had executive presence program. We will be doing couple of programs where we will be nurturing and training these Prernas. The Prernas will do a professional activity in terms of their activity with small and medium-sized practitioner. They will look at the 360-degree development of the firm. They will look at the HR policies. They will look at the areas where the firm can grow. They will look at the in terms of subject where you can add, in terms of customers which you can add, how to do social media marketing, how to do a good presence. They will look at the IT infrastructure which a CA firm is having and how can you save on the time and in turn the manpower. So the entire objective is, a long-term plan where these Prernas will help this small and medium-sized practitioner to grow their firm to 2x, 3x, 4x. And that will be the, objective of this program. And we know it's a difficult time and it's, all around if we see that the kind of NAFRA actions, if we talk, or if we talk the other government agencies like GST or income tax, everywhere the first target is chartered accountant. So we have, begin this series with important of documentation, and we have, wonderful speaker in terms of Abhijit. Abhijit, thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. And this is most important beginning because we are finding that small and medium-sized practitioners audit तो सब कुछ किया है, but documents के बारे में पूछेंगे तो 10 डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं है, ये मिसिंग है, वो मिसिंग है, MR नहीं है, एंगेजमेंट लेटर नहीं है, ऑडिट प्लान ठीक से बनाया नहीं. वो बोलेंगे हमने सब कुछ ऑडिट किया है. If you talk to them, they will give you 100 answers. If you ask the document, one document is not available. But now when the documents are subjected to peer review or review by FRB or review by some such external bodies like NAFRA, I think the audit not documented is audit not done. In such situation we are today. So we thought let's begin our series of Prerna with about awareness about documentation, the importance of documentation, and who other than Abhijit can be the best speaker on this topic, having, so much vast experience in handling the important audits which he has been doing. So we requested Abhijit, and Abhijit, really thank you to you. Thank you so much, Shweta madam, for, inviting me to share my thoughts. Over to you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ketan sir, for just briefing us for everyone. Thank you. So before handing over charge to Abhijit sir, just I would try to introduce him because he's a very versatile personality. Everybody knows him. But he's chartered accountant, LLB, 33 years of post-qualification experience, and 2 decades of speaking experience. Also, he is a faculty at post-qualification certificate courses of ICI and CAQ. He is author, mentor, blogger, interviewer, Phil. So with this brief introduction, I welcome you, Abhijit sir, at the platform of WIRC. And over to you. Also, I recognize the presence of my council colleague, Ruta Chitale. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So before I start, I would just like to know the mix of the audience. So are they small and medium-sized practicing chartered accountants who are primarily on the proprietary side, or they young chartered accountants with audit experience less than 5 or 10 years? So what would be the mix? So maybe I would structure the presentation accordingly also. So it's on documentation, but what would be the mix of the participants?
If members can post their reply in the chat box,
then maybe we could get a good idea. So what I understand from Ketan is this basically is your Prerna or the inspiration series to inculcate the importance of documentation amongst all chartered accountants. Basically, given the fact that NFRA and maybe other agencies are gunning for auditors, and basically even small errors, I would say, which may be not intentional, maybe by oversight, and because you have 10,000 things to do, maybe one slip is just possible. So it's not exactly out of any gross negligence. It's definitely not misconduct which is a continuous intentional process. But yes, how do we reduce those errors and how do you document that so we have evidence that this audit was performed in accordance with our laws, regulations, the technical standards, and whatever the institute says in this regards. Now, as far as the institute standards of auditing are concerned, especially SA 230, which talks of documentation, SA 230 is the overarching framework which talks of documentation, but you have all other standards which talk specifically on what to document, how to document, when to document. So the problem is it's not that we don't know how to do an audit, as Ketan also said. The problem is that we really are not that formal or structured when it comes to actually writing down what we did. So creating an evidence for everything that we did. We've done certain things, but if you ask them how this was done, show me the working paper, how it was done, then maybe we may not be having that. So it's about how do you inculcate the habit that you document the thing as and when you are doing it, so that when it's actually done, you have a backup along with it. And documentation is something which is not something which you do after the audit is over. In fact, you ensure that your documentation file is signed off first and then your audit gets signed off. So one is how many of us as chartered accountants do actually sign off the audit working paper file, actually have a separate working paper file as a permanent audit file or a current audit file and have a mix of that. So yes, so let's delve into all of that. I have not got anything on the chat, so I'm assuming we are a mix of chartered accountants, and I would structure my presentation.
Anshul Agrawal has written in the question answer box that
Yeah.
medium-sized practitioners.
Fine, perfect. So that's perfect. So I take that as a base and go ahead. So the first is, what is documentation? So before, when we are covering the topic of documentation, what is documentation and what should we document? Now that's the fundamentally when you are taking any topic or when you are doing anything, what is documentation? And why do we need to document? Now, documentation is recording of all important matters. So it's one which is important and what provides an evidence. So the key is important and that provides evidence. And what evidence? That the audit which you conducted was in accordance with all the basic principles and standards of auditing, and it is as per legal and regulatory requirements. So one is matters of importance. It is matters which can serve as an evidence and that you are adhering to the basic principles and the standards of auditing. So we have a standards of auditing. We have the 200 series, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and the 800 series. So we've adhered to all the standards of auditing. And then, and as per the legal and other regulatory requirements. So if you are auditing a bank, then maybe you have also complied with all the RBI circulars. If you're auditing an insurance company, then all directions issued by IDA. If it's a mutual fund or a broking company, then maybe all directions which are issued by SEBI. If it's a listed company, again, your LODR will come into play. So all the regulations which are there. Now, why an evidence? And what do we actually do when we conduct an audit? So when we conduct an audit, finally, we issue a report, which we call as an auditor's report. And that is an expression of an opinion, that the accounts are free from material misstatements. So again, the word is material, and again, it is misstatements. So we are talking of the balance sheet, which is the position of assets and liabilities as at a particular date, which is 31st March, profit and loss for the year ending on that date, and the cash flow position for the period. Now, we're expressing an opinion on the true and fair concept. And what we are also doing is, we are stating very clearly what are the management responsibilities and what are the auditor's responsibilities. And there we firstly say that we conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing. So the first thing what we should really introspect and ask ourselves is, have we truly conducted the audit in accordance with the standards of auditing? Now, do we have a checklist on standards of auditing so that, yes, okay, we have a checklist. This is what we've conducted in accordance with the standards of auditing. Now, the institute has made things very easy for us, as I would say, as well as things made difficult for us. Now, easy is because the standards are all there, the standards are codified, the standards are exhaustive, the standards are comprehensive. And apart from that, there is a checklist on standards of auditing. This checklist has been issued as recently as June 2023. And this standards of auditing checklist has all the questionnaires, all the templates. You can ready-made use it and keep it on your left side, and on the right side you are auditing, and there you have an entire ready-made spoon-fed checklist which you can just use. You just can't go wrong if you basically are using this checklist. Now that's the easy thing which is there. There is a checklist, very simple to understand, discipline to follow it. The difficult part is, do we have the discipline to follow it? Are we habituated to follow this checklist? And it is so comprehensive. Now that comprehensive is because it has covered every possible situation which can happen. And that's also because the standards of auditing are also based on international standards of auditing, which are comprehensive enough. So something which is there, we can't help it that it's vast. We can't help that there are more than, say, 30 plus standards of auditing. Now that they are there, and the fact that ignorance of these standards can't be an excuse, and we ourselves are specifically stating that we conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing, we can't make an incorrect assertion. So in case we've not conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing for whatever reasons, I think we need to give a disclaimer at that stage itself. So the sentence which is there, which we are writing, I think we need to be very specific on that, is whether we have done it. It should not be a cut-pasted sentence picked up from the previous year's audit report, or maybe if it's for the first year, this is the template, you just copy the template. So one is the audit conducted in accordance with the standards of auditing is one what we should sincerely introspect and inspect, and basically follow the checklist on standards of auditing issued recently June 2023 for the convenience of all members. Detailed checklist. Just follow that. Simple to understand. If in case there is any doubt on any of those issues on how this is to be done, or how comprehensive it has to be done, the point is you seek basically guidance. You can ask anybody for assistance, any fellow chartered accountant, any fellow practicing faculty, any regional council member, anyone can help and guide you. And one, we are living now in an era, especially post-COVID, which is an era not of competition. It is an era of cooperation. It is an era of collaboration. And it is what we do is we co-elevate each other and we co-create. So it's not just competition, it's cooperation and collaboration to co-create and co-elevate. That's the substance in which, basically, given the need of the hour, we all need to help and support each other, get our game much higher. So one is knowing what is documentation, something which is important, something which will serve as evidence. And what will serve as evidence is that the audit was conducted in accordance with the standards of auditing, and that all the laws and regulations which were applicable to the concerned entity were followed in the conduct of audit. Now, one word which is there is the sufficiency and the appropriateness of audit documentation. Now, what will this sufficiency and appropriateness depend on? So first is, who's the client? How big is the client? What is the nature of his business? So what is the engagement we are actually doing? What is the complexity of the business? What are the laws which are applicable to, and which are the laws in which he is actually supposed to adhere to? What are the forms of report we have to give? So which financial reporting framework? So whether we are in the Indian GAAP or we are in the NDS, and maybe if it's a bank, whether some other regulations of RBI may apply. If it's SEBI, then maybe SEBI rules, regulations. If it's a listed company, or LODR regulations. If it's an insurance company, or IRDA regulations. So there'll be various regulations which will be applicable. Then how did you conduct the audit? What was the methodology used to conduct the audit? What were the tools you adopted to conduct the audit? And finally, when you arrived at an audit conclusion, what was the basis for arriving at an audit conclusion? So we may have an unmodified opinion, or we may have a modified opinion which is either a qualified opinion, which could be an adverse opinion, or it could be a disclaimer. So when exactly would this be applicable? And you have your SA 700 series speak specifically on what type of opinions to give in what circumstances, and how do you actually document that, what you document. And one thing, even if you're qualified, or you're giving an adverse opinion, or you're giving a disclaimer, you need to communicate with the client that this is the opinion you want to give. So you give him an opportunity to represent why he doesn't think that this qualified adverse or a disclaimer is necessary. So there has to be a documentation even of that. So we need to know what to document. So we need to know our essays. There's no excuse that we don't know the essays. We need to read that. We need to read sufficiently in depth in between the 9 lines, not just a speed or a fast reading, an actual reading of what the essays mean. And this checklist issued in June 2023 is a great manner in which we can actually go about doing this. So one is, first, who our client is. What is the nature of the engagement we are doing? How complex his business is? What is the laws which govern him? What is the manner of report which we will issue? What is the methodology we are using to conduct the audit? What are the tools, techniques we are using? And finally, what's the manner in which we are arriving at a conclusion? And what is the report we are issuing? So that's basically what we need to consider on what we would be documenting to have sufficiency and appropriateness. So finally, what we are doing is we are issuing an audit opinion. So how was the opinion arrived at? Now you have your audit documentation, which also would say how you planned and performed the audit. So you have your SA 200, which is on basic principles, overall objectives of an auditor in conducting an audit in accordance with the standards. So knowing what these principles are, then you have your audit SA 210, agreeing on the terms of audit engagement. So issuance of an audit engagement letter. Do we have an audit engagement letter? So there's a specific checklist for basically conducting or accepting an audit engagement. So have we actually done a client review? Whether we have the necessary competency to do this type of engagement. What is the client reputation also? Would we be able to manage our independence? Would there be any conflict of interest? So all of these things will have to be considered before we even actually accept the engagement. And this is what your SA 210 talks about. This is what you need to document. And is our documentation ready or geared to handle that? Is what we need to see. We need to construct this. Then who will be actually doing the audit? When you're making an audit plan and you're making an audit program, the first is when you are doing the audit for the first time. You're basically having audit acceptance, so going through his previous annual reports or getting to know from him what would be the volume of work or what would be the complexity of work which is there, because you would also need to quote. And this is where there's one more side topic which is there on peer review for the purposes of your MEF and CAG empanelment or filling up the tenders. So when you're quoting something, isn't it that you're giving the right quote? You're not underquoting? Is it that you've calculated the man hours which you would need for the conduct of audit and the seniority of the resources which are needed within your team? Or maybe if you don't have the team, then maybe you need external help of professionals, or you need external help of other professionals. So maybe valuers, lawyers, company secretaries, whoever you may need. Have you factored in how much of their time and how much of their expertise would be needed? And have you arrived at that costing accordingly so that you have put it? And a peer reviewer is not interested in what you have quoted and why you have quoted. He is only there to know whether there is a process. Whether there is a process which is in place and that process is written so that there is a standardized holistic process which is followed. Each firm may have a different process. The process may not be the best of the process or may not be completely foolproof. But yes, there is a process in existence, there is a standardized process, and you are following it is good enough, because something which is there can always be improved. But whether we have something is the key. So, the audit plan. Now, audit plan at the start of the audit. As and when the audit is there and is being conducted, there could be a lot of surprises. So, is the audit plan being updated along the way? So, you may have planned X, and finally it may turn out to be Y. So, have you factored that in your audit plan? And then maybe you may need a different set skill of resources. So do you have that adaptability, the flexibility to quickly put in more staff, given the fact that there are deadlines, given the fact that as an auditor, you always face the challenges of time, you always face the challenges of data. Your data will not come in time. Well, data will not be complete when it comes. And if that data is complete and you have got some queries on it, the responses will not come in time, or the responses will be something else. And when you have raised some issues and when it's escalated to the higher levels, the higher level that it escalates, you'll get a response which is completely different from what was responded at the lower level. So the auditor will obviously have these challenges. And how he manages all these challenges is basically his skill, which his maturity, which he develops over the years. Again, it's a relation which he builds, and it's built on his integrity and his competency. So we have those principles of ethics, transparency, integrity, professional competency, your professional conduct. Should be no conflict of interest, no bias. So if that's there, the auditee will not hide things from you. He'll come out in the open and ask for you solutions on how this problem should be tackled. And finally, life would be easier for all of them if the auditee and the auditor are in sync, that finally there is a management responsibility to prepare the accounts as per the laws of the land. And it's the responsibility of the auditor to certify that these are true and fair and correctly done, and they have no material misstatements. So if both of them understand the responsibility and basically cooperate with each other, because the goal is technically the same. One is preparing it and one is an independent validator of the same. So how you build that trust with your integrity and competency, how that rapport is built up, is the key for any audit. So whether the responsibilities are being discharged properly and whether they are reviewed properly. So you may have a mix of articles, you may have a mix of employees, you may have a mix of qualified chartered accountants, you may have a mix of other professionals which may be there, and you may have an audit manager, you may have an engagement partner, you may have a review partner, you may have a signing partner. But that again would depend on the size of the audit, the number of people who would be there, And then for small and medium firms in which we are talking about, we may not have the luxury of having a manager, an engagement partner, a review partner, and a signing partner. Maybe at times you may have a manager who may double up as the engagement lead, and the signing partner would also be the reviewing partner. There would be no final separate reviewer. But how does in these circumstances, when currently there is no relaxation as such from the standards of auditing, this is where we need to be very clear on what we need to do. What is the role of the manager who in turn now becomes the maker? And what is the role of the signing partner who now is the checker? So there is just a 4-eye principle. There's no 6-eye or an 8-eye principle as would be the luxury in some audits or some bigger firms. Or maybe there could be some specialized luxury that maybe if it's an issue relating to tax, then maybe the tax partner would look at. If it's an IT related IT general audit, then your CISA partner or your DISA partner takes over. If it's something related to GST, then you have a specialized indirect tax coming in. Or maybe if it's pertaining to a particular industry, then you have an industry-wise partner coming in. But what we have is we have the strength of the entire institute with us. And the institute is always there to help. An institute is always there, as the motto of this is to give us inspiration, prerna, as we all put it. And we only need to ask for help. We only need to ask for support. We only need to ask for guidance. And we are basically living in an era where it's not just the niche, it's a super niche area now. So we can't be a jack of all trades. That's long gone. We are in an era where we are the jack of some. We are the king or the queen of few of those some. And we are the emperor or the empress of maybe 2 or 3 from the few from the some. So we are all specialized. So if we are in audit, we are in audit. If we are in tax, we are in tax. If we are in valuation, we are in valuation. That's what is basically firms are all about. It's all, I think there's also networking of firms which has been allowed. Networking with other professionals has been allowed. It's still to be formalized. But you can still take the help and the assistance of certain people who are more experienced in those areas, and then use their wisdom or their insights to get enriched or enlightened on how to conduct specific audits so that you don't miss out something. The only thing is you document those key audit matters which are there. The key is documentation. It is said that what is not documented is not considered done. And documentation is the evidence. And why evidence? Let's say something wrong happens. And that wrong could not be by an intentional fraud done by somebody. Now, frauds are also on the rise. So the fact that somebody could have committed a fraud and misled and misrepresented the accounts by fudging or concealing or manipulating or duplicating or whatever manner. So one would be the intentional part, the other would be the inadvertent solitary single miss. So again, in both cases, there's something which has been missed out, so there has been a detection risk. Now, how do we, as auditors, circumvent the detection risk? We have an SA 315 on risk assessment. So how many of us actually do a risk assessment of what can go wrong, what we don't see coming, what could we possibly miss out, what are the key risk indicators, key performance indicators for a particular business? So let's say if it's a bank, you could have an NPA divergence, which is where the Reserve Bank always has an issue on their IRAC norms. You could have a money laundering risk. You could have a cyber security risk. And you could have investment operational market risk, various risks, finally culminating into a reputational regulatory risk. In a broking company or in a mutual fund, you could have front running, you could have insider trading, you could have mis-selling. In an insurance company, again, you could have mis-selling, you could have huge investment risks, you could have actuarial valuation issues. So each business would have its typical issues. A normal business would have a basic liquidity issue, which may turn out to a solvency issue and which may turn out to a bankruptcy issue. And it's no longer the survival of the fitter, of the fittest. It's among the fitter of the fittest, the level goes up by one notch more. It's not just the VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, complex and the ambiguous world which we're living in. It's the brittle, anxious, non-linear and incomprehensible world. Businesses are falling by the dozen. You don't know what risk will come out. COVID was maybe a black swan event where the volatility of the risk just spread quickly. Nobody saw it coming. Even if in December 2020 there was something which was there in China, we all thought that this was a Chinese issue contained there, not just will come to India. You have a war which went on last year between Ukraine and Russia, largely contained to that part. And now we have another war going on in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, which is a part of the Gaza Strip. But then you have news of maybe a Lebanon coming in, to have somebody coming in from Syria, you have Iran making some postures, you have US coming in with its fleet there, and you have the Chinese making some overtures, and you have all recipe for a possible world war. And how would businesses which have its dependency on certain inputs which are based from those areas be able to function? That's where our going concern, what I say, it talks specifically of a going concern, the necessity to evaluate organizations on a going concern becomes much more imperative than before. So various essays, your related parties, huge scope for manipulating and adjustment there. And you can't do 100%. Obviously, yes, using your artificial intelligence and your computerized assisted tools and techniques, you could cover much more than what you were, or by smart audits, or by good analytics. So you have analytical procedures also as a standard of auditing. So how much of us do actually conduct analytical procedures? Then your sampling, which we do, have we really documented whether this is the perfect statistically random sample which we could have selected, and have we documented that? Or the materiality levels, have we defined materiality levels which SA 320 requires us to determine? And have we reviewed this during course of audit when we come across new findings? So has the materiality level changed, or have there been reviews to see that okay, the materiality level remains the same? So is there a documentation of what were your materiality levels pre-audit, during conduct of audit, and at the conclusion of the audit assignment? An SAT 250 on laws and regulations, have we made a comprehensive laundry list of what the laws and regulations are? Have we inquired from the management? Have we got a representation to that effect? That comes again to the representation letter which we take under SA 580. Is the representation letter taken just for the sake of representation, and is it something of a letter which we receive post audit? And is it something what we have issued and we have ourselves drafted what we need as a representation? So just it's taken up as a filing issue, or is it really taken up because there are certain things which are management estimates, management calls, which we can only corroborate, which we can't directly verify, and how important they are in our judgment? And we, as an experienced auditor, the word used here is an experienced auditor. So if somebody may be with, say, a 15-year standing, or somebody if at that seniority with that knowledge, wisdom, and insight, would have arrived at a similar opinion as you have arrived. So all of these need to be known, need to be documented. Auditors' response to assessed risks, SA 330. So all the controls, the maker checker, the job rotations, the validations, authorizations, balance confirmations, reconciliations, ratifications, now various audits. Again, coming to audits, using the work of another auditor, using the work of an expert. Are we blindly relying on third-party legal certificates for making assumptions on contingent liability or tax demands? Or how are we relying on the internal or the concurrent audit reports to actually give us an idea about the depth of the efficacy and the efficiency of the internal controls in operation? And how do we actually certify the internal controls over financial reporting? What actually do we check to arrive at that conclusion? So finally, we are taking a huge responsibility, and are we accountable? And within our team, is there an accountability? Is there that accountability seeped in? Is there that maturity, or is that skill set imparted to our staff that they need to be responsible and that they need to have that level of accountability? And if things go wrong, and somebody says that you didn't conduct your audit in accordance with the standards of auditing, or we need to say that we conducted our audit in accordance with standards of auditing, but despite that, it was something which maybe a prudent auditor in the circumstances would not have been able to find out, or maybe it's an inadvertent issue which is not a pervasive, significant, or a recurring act of negligence. Something like I'm just basically careless. It's maybe it's oops, I made an error. It's not something that I have complete disregard for all the standards or whatever it is. I'm just doing and I'm just signing without any key. So it's completely being reckless is what would be the term. So no auditor would be like that. But now the fact that these standards are in black and white, we need to document to show that we did adhere to this. And this is where our records are important. We need to create that record. And these records cannot be created post audit. These records will have to be created alongside as the audit takes place. So sign off these records first before you sign off the final accounts. And our institute has given the standards of auditing checklist. You can just fill up that checklist. That will give you enough tools and resources at your command that you don't miss out anything. So have that reviewed first. So have a system of quality control. Your SQC1 runs paramount, and there are 6 principles of SQC1. And I'm not going very specifically on that SQC1. It's all of us know that. But is SQC1 firmly entrenched in our working? Is it becoming a fundamental philosophy as the manner at which we are conducting our audit? If we always do what we always did, we'll always get what we always got. So we need to change. And change is the only constant in our audit life. We need to be fast. And when I mean fast, I mean flexible, adaptable, speedy, and timely. Flexible, adaptable, speedy, and timely. And I need to, what they say, act at the speed of thought. And when I mean act at the speed of thought, I mean document at the speed of thought. And we have various tools now where we can basically document things. Whenever we are having discussions, we can simply use a voice recorder and record, and we can have somebody make a minutes of that. So all important conclusions can be actually recorded. It's a simple hack. How many of us actually do that? Or we have software which can convert our speech into text. How many of us can use it and make life easier for us? Or when we have this ready-made checklist, it's just filling that up. And filling that up alongside the conduct of audit. So when you are planning the work, you plan in such a manner that you incorporate the documentation part also as an activity. And initially, it may take time because we're not habituated to it. Initially, it may be difficult. We're not used to it. And it could, because we'll make mistakes along the way. It's as simple or difficult as maybe in a childhood when we were learning to ride a bicycle. Suddenly we didn't, we must have fallen a number of times, but suddenly somebody who was holding us and pushing us and suddenly just left us and we were there going and we just learned. Same way is while driving a car. We had maybe a motor school instructor doing it. He had his clutch and brakes, and he may have used it in the initial days, but maybe we just didn't know when he was not using it at all. So initially, the habit has to be developed to document it along. So when you start doing it, you'll only get better and better. Because repetition is the mother of all skills, and practice makes a man perfect. It says you need 10,000 hours to be an expert in something. That's general theory. We have already done, because we know what we have done. The fact that we are chartered accountants are proof that we are skilled. We have the talent, we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we have the expertise, we have the wisdom. We know what to do, we know how to do, we know to what extent we have to do. The only thing we need to get habituated is to write down what we did, how we did, and to what extent we did. I'm repeating, we just need to write down what we did, how we did, and to what extent we did. And you write it down as and when you are conducting the audit. So maybe you can have a 20-80 rule that 20% you spend your time on writing, documenting, 80% you spend the time on actual conduct of audit. We need an initial slight change, maybe a mindset change. But once that shift has been made, I think it just becomes a part of routine. And I think it is always the hesitancy in taking the first step. I blog very continuously. And when I wrote my first blog, it took me 2 months basically to blog on a topic which I knew and I was doing for years. When I was doing it for the first time. So the first blog took 2 months. The second blog took 45 days. The third blog took a month. The fourth took 3 weeks. The fifth was a fortnight. The sixth, a week. And subsequently, over the last 4-5 years, I've had more than 800 blogs posted. And at times, it doesn't take me more than 10 minutes to post a blog because you think, you just note it down, and you just post it. So it's all practice, and practice is the repetition of all skills. So they just develop the habit of documenting things along the way. It's as simple as that. So when you are documenting whatever you have done, as and when you see your notes, your work papers, the quality obviously improves, the control over the audit is much better. Anybody asking you anything at the audit committee or at the audit conclusion, or anybody asking you anything anytime, it just becomes a formality. Even if you're woken up in the sleep, you've done your work so deeply and profoundly that it's just a matter of maybe a verbal vomit of what you've done. And you've done things. So just to give another example, this talk, I was told to deliver as late as about 2:30 p.m. This was supposed to be at 5, and I was somewhere in town, and I had to come to my office, which is at Santa Cruz. So this is about 20 kilometers away. So I came in about 3:30, 3:45. I just prepared a brief structure on which I would speak. But the fact is that I agreed to speak More so is because I'm speaking on something which I am doing regularly, day in, day out. So it doesn't need for me to think much. I'm expressing my thoughts, I'm expressing my views, I'm expressing my ideas, I'm expressing what I would instruct my colleagues, I would instruct my juniors, I would instruct my peers, or what I would gain in knowledge from my peers and seniors, or maybe even as a reverse mentoring from somebody who's much younger to me by age but has various other specific skills. So if you've done that yourself and you've done it over a period of time, you just don't need any prior preparation for that. If anybody asks you anything, any NFRA panel, any quality control check, any peer reviewer asks you anything, asks you about your process, you have a structured, formal, documented process which you can just show to him that this is it. So the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures. What you need to document. What you did, when you did, how you did. The word used is nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. And then the custody of these documentation, the confidentiality of this documentation, and the retention. So when a peer reviewer comes to your office, what does he generally ask for? The client register, the audit register, the certificate register. So obviously we would have them ready. But there's no need to have that ready when you're doing it. This could be a way of a part of the structuring of your, you know what your clients are, you have a client register. You know what audits you are doing on, what are the nature of audits, what are the tax audits, what are the internal audits, what are the certification work, what are the statutory audits, what are the concurrent audits, what are the tax audits, what are the transfer pricing audits, what are other review engagements, what are other consulting opinion engagements. You would have a list of all those. Then what trainings you had? Trainings again based on the skill set gaps of your employees and basically the skill set gaps which you feel on the level of work, the complexity of work you're doing. How would you train them? And so the training calendar, the training materials which are there. And as I said, the discussions, the copies of what all you have done. You can voice record it, or you can have somebody actually minuting it, and then maybe circulating it quickly formally so that everybody is on the same page, it's signed off and it's kept as a record. Then the library you have of various materials which you have. And whatever you say of maybe things available on the net, the beauty of reading a book is different. And I've been a member of the WRC library since I'm saying over 5 decades. So I've been a member since the 80s when I was a student, the late 80s, 90s when I was a professional, and then the decades just after Y2K, the 2010 and the 20 plus decades. So I've been a member of the institute for 5 decades, the library, and have been richly benefited by the books which are there. There's no amount of knowledge or wisdom which you would know anywhere else, but by reading and making practical application of those knowledge which you would know. Then he would ask about your independence, methodology in accepting an audit. So do you have an independence checklist? How do you determine that independence when you have accepted an audit? How do you deal with conflicts of interest? Is there a conflict of interest policy? Do you have an organization structure? Or vice versa, do you take an organization structure of the client and then understand what his controls are so as to determine when you're talking of a risk-based audit that you prioritize and spend time on the key risk activities, the KRIs, the KPIs, which need more time, the CAMs, and how you dealt with them. Then who are your review partners, who are your engagement partners, who are your audit managers? You would need all that. Or if you don't have the luxury of that, then how is your maker checker, whether internal, external, how you have leveraged all your resources so as to have a process that you've done our work with reasonable due care and diligence. And he will need all your policies on recruitment of your staff, how you are supervising their work, how you are upgrading their skill sets or syncing their skill sets with the complexity of the work needed, what indemnities you take from your staff so as to make them responsible and accountable. They would briefly review your staff files. What are your manner and methodology to induct and recruit people and also give them the initial orientation? How is your quality review being done? What does quality mean to you? Do you have quality manuals? So engagement acceptance, how do you actually go about accepting an engagement? Do you have a letter of engagement? And you have standard templates available in the institute. You just need to modify it to suit your particular client. Are you actually using that? And how are you managing time? So in your audit plan, you would have allocated certain resources for certain type of work. So is that being synced? How do you actually know if you have overshot time in some area and why you have overshot? So maybe the next time you don't do the same mistake. And how do you deal with key audit matters? How do you use external professionals? When do you use them? To what extent you use them? And if you know that somebody is not shaping up well, then how do you supplement him or how do you replace him? So these are procedural issues, these are process issues which peer reviewer would look at. And this is what you need to broadly document. Like you have evidence to justify to an independent third party that you have all the processes in place for a smooth, efficient, and effective conduct of an audit with reasonable due care and diligence, which meets all the technical standards of the standards of auditing, as well as the applicable laws and regulations on the line. So that's in short what the work papers would all be. So your audit program, your audit plan, your audit checklist, your knowledge of the client's business, the documentation of all that, the documentation of all the risks as per SA 315, the auditor's response to assessed risks as per SA 330, a huge area now on SA 240, auditors' responsibilities as regards frauds and errors. Again, whether the auditor is a bloodhound or a watchdog, or how deep he should go in relation to finding fraud, but if he gets an indication of basic weaknesses in internal controls which enhances the possibility of fraud, then how has he widened his scope of audit to eliminate the possibility that there would not be any fraud. So this is something which he needs to do. Has he done a basic fraud risk assessment? If he's done that, then it's fine. He needs to evidence that if there is a fraud, and if he's not done anything, when you know that frauds can happen, and if you've just turned a blind eye to that, you're reckless to that fact, and you've not done your audit in accordance with the essays. So the point is, you may have checked a lot of things. God forbid something which you may not have checked would have turned up badly. And if you have not documented, you can't even evidence the 99 good things you did. And that one bad thing will come to haunt you. And if you are there as a continuing auditor, you might get cooperation from the management. But if you are no longer there as an auditor, once you are gone, then they don't even know who you are. Even the watchman on the door will not take you in, where otherwise you would have a red carpet entry as an auditor. So do your workings, take your workings before you actually leave the organization. In fact, as mandated, have all those things even before you sign off the audit. Get that signed off, get your internal work papers, your temporary and the permanent work files signed off first for completeness before you even have a look at the accounts for final sign. SA 600 series on using work of other auditors or the internal auditor. Your SA 700 series on the manner on how you qualify. Your SA 800 if you are using a financial framework other than the normal one, whether you are using a special purpose framework. Your SA 320 which requires you to document materiality. Your SA 530 which requires you to document how you have used sampling. Your SA 520 on 580 on written representation. Your SA 550 on related parties. SA 540 on audit evidence. All the audit checklist, all the disclosures, all the qualifications, are they actually as mandated as per the various applicable laws and regulations? And for the peer reviewer, you'll have to give him all access and all explanations to all your records and your processes. He may not take copies of that, but he can make abstracts of notes. He can't refuse them. And what are the issues that we always face? The issues we always face is there has been no standardization, there's no formalization. We've done it, it's all there in our mind. We know how to do it, we do it in a flow, but we have not documented the flow. We have an audit working paper file, we have not bifurcated that file into permanent or current file. What is the organization chart? We don't have that. What are the changes which have taken place in the management from the previous year to the current year? What about the attrition in key staff in the organization? Are there any weaknesses in controls as a result? We have not documented. We have not tested our documentation for sufficiency and appropriateness. At times, the peer reviewers get some basic mistakes. We don't have issued an MRL and we don't have a representation letter. So we're just not in compliance with SA5. In a lot of bank concurrent audits or in a lot of bank branch statutory audits, the branch managers or the branch management doesn't issue us MRLs. Need to qualify the audit report that we've not got SA 580 as mandated by the standards of auditing. So we've not got all the information and explanation which to the best of our knowledge and belief. So we need to qualify that. But we've not got the MRL, we have not issued an engagement letter, we have not got the engagement letter accepted. So the various files which we have on record, no cross-referencing of something with the evidence which we have, no indexation of any files. At times we don't even have the audit appointment letter. Balance confirmations. Again, there is an essay which talks of balance confirmations, but we don't have balance confirmations of banks, investments, some basic physical verification reports of fixed assets, the listing of stocks, the age-wise analysis of debtors or creditors. Those basic details are not there. Testing of controls, independent testing of controls, so independent testing of maker checker or job rotations or authorizations, validations, ratifications, physical verifications. We have not tested those controls independently for its efficacy. Checklists, flowcharts, questionnaires, many times are not there as a plan, part of our audit tool and technique. We don't have an audit plan, we don't have an audit program, we don't have an audit checklist. The fact that there has been an independent partner review has not been evidenced. As I said, it may be a proprietary concern, but yes, there is certain amount we may have asked somebody, we may have discussed with somebody, we may create a record of that. Creating a record is not difficult. And it's not creating a record per se of creating a record. It's actually cooperating or collaborating with somebody and getting the inputs to ensure that the process which you followed was correct. I think in n number of times, whenever we are in difficulty, we get n number of queries through mail or WhatsApp. It's nothing but we are asking for advice, we are asking for help, we are asking for support. You can always document and keep that on record. I think it's just creating a minute and an evidence of something which we have done. It's very difficult to create something later on, especially after 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. You have cases which come out for disciplinary hearings after 4 years, 5 years, after being in limbo, especially after COVID. If you've not done the documentation properly, you may not even recollect what was done. And if the client is no longer with you, you may not even know what he did because he would refuse to cooperate. Maybe at times the people who are dead may not be existing on the planet. So, imperative we do our things at that point of time. If you are using experts, there's no documentation or no certifications on record that this is what opinion we asked for and this is what advice we got. If there is an X conclusion we have arrived at in our audit report, what was the basis for arriving at that conclusion? There's no documentation for that. If we have qualified certain things, we have never asked the client for his explanations on the fact that we are qualifying and what's his stand on that. If you have not done 100%, if you've done sampling, no documentation on what is the audit sampling which we've used. If you have conducted analytical reviews, it's SE specifically talks on analytical reviews. There are no workings for that. how we have scheduled the work, how we have laid various timelines, whether the work is happening as per the timeline, whether they have been reached, and how we have managed to cover up by maybe putting extra staff or maybe reducing certain areas. Now, whether that areas which we reduced were something which were not important, or we've just not covered some part of audit and just worked down to time pressures and certified. At times, your acceptance of audit in the form 23B, which you file with the Register of Companies, has not been on record. How have you reviewed your staff performance? What is the manner of review? It's annual. Is there an incentive linked bonus plan? And how have you independently tested or corroborated the evidence which you have got from the management, especially estimates? Finally, it's one, compliance with the technical standards. It's compliance with the quality of reporting. It's your office systems and procedures which you have used. And it's also of the staff training. So function of all these four bits, the peer reviewer, you just got to give him all the records, especially the documentation of the procedures which you have conducted in the conduct of the audit. And now we have something which is mandatory for firms for a particular threshold of clients. And I'm not going into what those thresholds are, but we have an audit quality maturity model, which is mandatory from 1/4/23. And we have our levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And we have certain set of questionnaires on 3 parameters. One is operational, one is HR, and one is strategic. And there are 600 marks questions. Operations is 280 marks, HR is 240 marks, and strategy is 80 marks. And based on each of those questions, it's a lot on adherence to your SQCs and essays, the operational part, use of technology, use of incentive linked systems, use of various automated tools and techniques, and all your good HR practices of training, incentivization, work-life balances, of outbounds, of regeneration time, of encouraging diversity and inclusion. And then you have your strategy. And 25, 50, 75 plus, that would be the levels. So AQMM is mandatory. AQMM would be used in future years to determine the quality levels which your firm are, and it could be an aspirational target to be at the higher levels, level 3 and level 4. If you want to aim for higher level of quality audits, then EQMM again is something which you need to measure and eventually benchmark to a higher maturity level. You have your digital competency maturity models also for various aspects. That's one where each one of us as a professional need to benchmark. So now specifically coming to small and medium practitioners. And maybe to the women chartered accountants, and coming to the young professionals. So for the small and medium practitioners, it's all about sharpening our saw. It's all about collaborating with fellow chartered accountants in their specialized niche, developing certain niches of our own, and be in an era where you collaborate with each other to active cooperation, to co-create and co-elevate each other. And the various other faculties which are there, in fact, people like me at a particular age have certain skill sets which we're more than willing to share. Whereas people at a particular age group have a particular skill set. So it's not just mentoring, it's reverse mentoring which can be done all across. And when you talk of women chartered accountants, they bring a certain different set skills. And it's always on the balance that you bring along. And I was just blogging today on Team India. Why it's the team to beat. And when I mean the team to beat, I'm using the acronym, the balance, the experience, the adaptability, and the talent. The combination of the balance in the team, the experience, the adaptability, and the talent they have. And then that's where we as chartered accountants can have the same balance by the right inclusion of diversity, having the right experience, being adaptable to change, to the varying demands, the changes in laws and regulations as they take place, the changing in new evidence as we come across. And obviously we have the talent, we have the trust, and we have the tenacity. So we again basically he himself was not aware of his own strength till he actually was awakened and he lifted the entire Prunagiri Parvat. It's high time we collaborate, cooperate with each other to, as I say, co-create and co-elevate each strategy. Change is the only constant in life. The more we know that we still have a lot more to know. The one who's the emperor or the empress here is the one who knows what he doesn't know. Disruptions are common. Before these disruptions disrupt us, we need to disrupt the disruptions ourselves. And be a lifelong learner. We need a lot of soft skills, we need a lot of emotional skills, we need a lot of mental toughness. So it's just not just about the technical skills, it's just about a lot of other skills. It's not about how we develop the rapport, how we develop the trust, how we inspire that confidence, how we ask the right questions to get the right responses. And finally, our communication skills. Communication is the greatest skill on the planet. how do we communicate to safeguard ourselves? How do we document to serve as an evidence that what we did was as per due process, as per due adherence to the standards of auditing, which we ourselves have professed in our auditor's report that we have adhered to the standards of auditing. Let's all enjoy the audit process. Let's not take it as a burden. Whenever we are in doubt, let's get ourselves clear. We have an entire CA fraternity, a huge ocean of wisdom. And as the motto says, he one who is awake when all others are sleeping. He has partners in nation building. I think if we just combine the power within all of us, we could be limitlessly powerful. And we have all the tools and techniques which are given by the institute. We have the institute having various programs, and it's just, as we say, we are the sum of the 5 quality people we move around with. And the institute gives us the opportunities through various seminars to interact with thousands of such quality people. And then we are the sum of thousands of these quality masterminds that we immediately interact with. And for professional success, I always maintain that we need 3 people. One is a mentor, one who can guide you in your professional journey. One is a mastermind, and you have our study circles which are powerful masterminds. And you need one accountability partner who will have your back whenever you are slipping. So these 3 you need to ensure that in your audit quality growth, personal and professional growth and development, they are constantly behind your side. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to address. It's always a pleasure to speak with fellow chartered accountants and share whatever I have, what I've learned along. So any other views or any specific questions, maybe I would address. So whenever it's a 2-hour session, I generally speak for about 100 minutes. So taking the initial introduction, I speak for about 90 minutes because theoretically that's the max you can speak at one level of energy and your passion. You need breaks and a change in momentum. So thank you Shweta, thank you Uruta, thank you Arpit, thank you Ketan for giving me this opportunity. And every time I speak, I reiterate my commitment to adhere to the accounting standards much more, because when you speak certain things, it becomes a part of your life. It becomes you. You become a change, transformed person. Your form changes. That's transformation. So you need to walk the walk. You need to walk the talk. So if you're speaking something, you always would be inviting them in your daily routine practice. So that's what has helped me a lot. And I would like to thank the Institute for giving me this opportunity to share whatever I have learned from my seniors, my peers, my mentors, my masterminds and my accountability partners with others and do my two bits for maybe as I use the word, I follow the philosophy of hurt mad. I call it hurt mad, being helpful, useful, and relevant with trust to make a difference. Thank you. Any questions or? Data and whoever is there, anything else? Any specific questions from the audience? Yeah, hi Shweta. Hello.
Yeah, hi. So are we closing? I'm not able to hear you.
For about when the session is till 6, I speak till about 100 minutes or so. So about 15 minutes, I give it for any interaction. Yeah. So we are a part of the Professional Speakers Association of India, which is affiliated to a Global Speakers Federation, which has a membership of about 17 countries. So we always have a strong discipline that whenever we speak, we'll speak only for about 90 minutes because that's the theoretical fluent way where you can hold an audience attention no matter how good or bad you are.
No, but that's fantastic. I mean,
One is by habit. We used to actually time our speech, even if we are speaking on a flow, to end at specifically at that 90 minutes.
yeah,
So it's something like if you're speaking for 15 minutes, if it's 15 minutes and 30 seconds, you'll be physically lifted and thrown out of the stage. And
right.
if it's more than 90, you will be just blanked off. And you will be looking.
Correct.
So it's like an audit deadline. We have to adhere to a deadline we have to sign, but at the same time see that we've delivered quality and we've adhered to our essays and documentation so that nobody can come back to actually trouble us or
Very
ask
right.
a reputation issue on us.
Yeah. So yeah, if members have any questions, anything, so they can ask, I mean.
So if you have a very a limited audience, I think you could next time is we could have an actual interaction with each one of them and I think make it more interactive.
Right. And this we are planning to start in a physical mode also very soon.
Great.
So just for to have a flavor, we have launched it virtually.
Yeah, but these are good topics, I think. Quite good topics.
Yeah.
Fine, thanks. I think
Yeah. So, well, really, thank you. Thank you so much, Abhijit ji. You covered very well. I mean, within a very short notice, we have requested because all of a sudden our final जो speakers थे उनका कुछ busy schedule था and said then she had to cancel it and we requested you and
It's my pleasure to, and I hope I did justice to.
we are obliged, sir. Really, thank you so much for delivering a wonderful talk. I am very sure that participants must have benefited from your talk. Even I was listening, so many things were there. पता होती है हमको लेकिन हम skip कर जाते हैं.
One is actually what has happened is over the years, it's just because of the last 4-5 years that I've been a part of this professional speaking fraternity that I've moved from being a subject matter speaker to somebody who speaks, who knows a subject. So I also would not have taken it on this topic because now it's maybe you also need justice because it's for your time. It's also 100 minutes of the audience time where they would have done something else. They are spending listening to you, so you have to deliver value. So it's maybe the fact that you can speak something which is of relevance and of some sense based on your experience over the last maybe 3+ decades of handling various things and being at the receiving end of everything. So facing an NFRA, facing a quality control council, or facing the disciplinary committee, or advising various others on it. So you've been on all sides of the chair. So it's you are battle ready and toughened. So whenever something happens, you want to be just that's what you need to be able to be flexible, speedy, timely, and adaptable to all the changing needs and demands.
Right. And you have given a perfect justice to the topic.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we are closing for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Good night. And happy Dasara in advance.
Thank you. So you have a session tomorrow also?
Yes, tomorrow also.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.